Imagine making a discovery so important that it changes human history forever. The kind of breakthrough that earns your name a place in science textbooks, maybe even a Nobel Prize. When we think about great scientists, we picture brilliant minds changing the world from inside their laboratories. We imagine moments of triumph, the breakthrough, the applause, the recognition. But that's only part of the story. Because history is filled with discoveries that came with a terrible price. Sometimes the thing that changes the world changes the person who discovered it first. Long before anyone understood the risks, scientists willingly exposed themselves to dangerous chemicals, invisible radiation, deadly diseases, and experiments that had never been tested on another human being. Not because they were reckless, not because they wanted fame, but because someone had to take the first step into the unknown. They were explorers of a different kind, pushing into places no one had ever gone before. Every experiment answered one question and uncovered 10 more. Every breakthrough brought humanity closer to understanding the universe, while quietly bringing its discoverer closer to disaster. The most chilling part is that these weren't failed experiments. The science worked. The discoveries were real. In many cases, they changed medicine, chemistry, and physics forever. But the very thing that made these scientists famous also became the thing that destroyed them. Today, we're counting down 5 scientists who paid the ultimate price for changing the world. These are the people whose greatest discoveries didn't just make history. They became the reason history remembers them. And we're starting with a chemist who had what might be the worst laboratory habit in the entire history of science. Number 5, the chemist who tasted everything. Meet Carl Wilhelm Scheele, an 18th century Swedish chemist who discovered oxygen before anyone else on Earth, and also discovered chlorine, manganese, barium, molybdenum, tungsten, and a long list of chemical compounds most people have never heard of, largely because he had one incredibly unwise scientific method. He tasted and smelled almost everything he made. This was somewhat normal for chemists at the time, since instruments to safely analyze substances barely existed, but Scheele took it further than most, running an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 experiments over his career, routinely sniffing and tasting new compounds to help identify them. Some of those compounds happened to be arsenic, lead, and mercury. He also became the first person to produce hydrofluoric acid in large quantities, a substance so dangerous it can eat through glass and bone, and he made it in bulk in the 1770s, in a lab with no ventilation. By 1785, Scheele was showing signs of kidney disease and skin lesions. On May 21, 1786, he died at his home in Köping, Sweden. He was 43 years old. Doctors at the time attributed it to mercury poisoning, though modern historians point to decades of cumulative heavy metal exposure from arsenic, lead, and mercury combined. He discovered oxygen, the thing every living creature needs to survive, and the way he tested his other discoveries almost certainly killed him. Number 4, the man who X-rayed his own hands into oblivion. In 1895, a German physicist discovered X-rays, and within months, laboratories around the world, including Thomas Edison's, were racing to figure out what these strange new rays could do. Edison assigned the project largely to his assistant, a glassblower named Clarence Dally. Dally didn't just build the X-ray tubes, he tested them repeatedly, using his own hands as the target to check whether the beam was working. Nobody knew yet that X-rays could cause cancer. By 1900, Dally's hands and face were visibly damaged from radiation exposure. He kept working. By 1902, a lesion on his left wrist had turned into skin cancer. Doctors amputated his left hand. It didn't stop there. Ulcers developed on his right hand, and 4 fingers were removed. The cancer kept spreading. Surgeons eventually amputated his remaining arm at the shoulder. None of it worked. Clarence Dally died on October 2, 1904, at just 39 years old, from cancer that had spread into his chest. He's widely considered the first American to die from experimenting with radiation. Edison was reportedly so shaken by what happened to his assistant that he abandoned X-ray research entirely, later telling a reporter, "Don't talk to me about X-rays. I am afraid of them." Number 3, the scientist who tried to reverse aging with his own blood. Alexander Bogdanov was a Russian physician and revolutionary who, after falling out with Lenin politically, turned his full attention to a strange scientific obsession: blood. Specifically, he believed that exchanging blood between an older and a younger person could rejuvenate both of them, slow aging, restore vitality, maybe even push back death itself. In 1925, he founded the Institute for Hematology and Blood Transfusions in Moscow and began performing the experiment on himself. He underwent 11 blood exchanges with various donors, including, at one point, Lenin's own sister. Bogdanov reported feeling genuinely rejuvenated, improved eyesight, his hair loss slowing down. His colleagues even joked that he looked years younger. Then came transfusion number 12. In April 1928, Bogdanov exchanged blood with a student, one he specifically selected because the student was recovering from malaria and tuberculosis, since Bogdanov wanted to test whether the exchange would also transfer immunity. 3 hours later, he was in severe medical distress. He spent his final hours doing something almost unbelievable, calmly recording his own symptoms for the sake of scientific data, refusing further medical intervention. He died on April 7, 1928. To this day, historians still debate exactly what killed him, a mismatched immune reaction, or the diseases carried in the donor's blood. The student notably made a full recovery. Bogdanov didn't. Number 2, the physicist who held a nuclear reaction together with a screwdriver. At Los Alamos in 1946, physicist Louis Slotin was one of the world's leading experts in a terrifyingly named procedure, tickling the dragon's tail. The process involved manually bringing 2 half-spheres of beryllium together around a plutonium core, inching them closer and closer to the point of a nuclear chain reaction, without letting them fully touch. The standard safety procedure used small physical shims to guarantee the halves couldn't accidentally close. Slotin, an experienced daredevil who'd already performed this exact demonstration dozens of times, skipped the shims. Instead, he kept the gap open using the flat blade of a screwdriver. On May 21, 1946, while demonstrating the technique to a room of 7 colleagues, the screwdriver slipped. For a fraction of a second, the 2 halves of the sphere touched. The room flashed with a pulse of blue light, and every Geiger counter in the room went off at once. Slotin instantly knew what had happened. In the same motion, he yanked the 2 halves apart with his bare hands, stopping the reaction and almost certainly saving the lives of everyone else in the room, at the cost of absorbing a massive, instantly fatal dose of radiation himself. He spent his final 9 days in a hospital bed, conscious for much of it, as his body went through a horrifying and well-documented process of radiation poisoning, burns, internal bleeding, and total organ failure. Louis Slotin died on May 30, 1946. He was 35. Number 1, the woman whose own notebooks are still radioactive today. Marie Curie discovered polonium and radium, pioneered the science of radioactivity, and remains the only person in history to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. She also had absolutely no idea what she was doing to her own body. In an era before anyone understood the dangers of radiation, Curie handled raw radioactive material with her bare hands almost daily, carried vials of radium in her pockets, and even kept glowing samples on her nightstand simply because she liked the way they looked in the dark. During World War I, she personally operated mobile X-ray units near the front lines, exposing herself to even more radiation while helping treat wounded soldiers. Over decades, this exposure quietly destroyed her bone marrow's ability to produce healthy blood cells. She died on July 4, 1934, from a condition called aplastic anemia. Her body had essentially lost the ability to make new blood. She was 66, but here's the part that still unsettles historians and archivists today. When her coffin was exhumed in 1995 to move her remains to the Pantheon in Paris, scientists discovered it was lined with nearly 2.5 millimeters of lead, enough to suggest people at the time may have suspected just how contaminated her body really was. And it's not just her body. Marie Curie's personal notebooks, her furniture, even her cookbooks remain radioactive to this day. Her laboratory notebooks are kept permanently sealed in lead-lined boxes at France's National Library, and anyone who wants to read them has to sign a waiver first. Because radium has a half-life of about 1,600 years, those notebooks are expected to stay radioactive for roughly the next 1,500 years. 5 scientists, 5 discoveries that changed the world, and in every single case, the thing that made them famous is also the thing that killed them. They didn't get destroyed by failure. They got destroyed by being right.